So just now, I was talking with Andrash, and he asked about the case of receiving a Tantric commentary from a teacher, if that teacher then will automatically become your guru. And I think so. I think I remember hearing that, but I need to check about that. But it also reminded me that I wanted to say something, that this class that I'm teaching, even though it's about Tantra, I don't consider it a Tantric commentary because I'm not qualified to be a Tantric teacher. So I think of it more like I'm just sharing with you some things that I've learned. So we're just looking together at this material rather than me giving you a commentary, because I'm definitely not qualified to do that. Okay? We agree? I'm not a Tantric guru. So I was thinking maybe we could start with another little meditation. This morning we did a short meditation on the first two of the three principal aspects of the path, and thought we could do another little meditation on the third one, emptiness. Lama Zopa Rinpoche in the past taught a way of meditating on emptiness that's relatively not too complicated. It involves just looking for the I, searching for the I, the sense of I, me. Because they do say that that's the best place to start our investigation of emptiness, with our own I, our own self. It's something it's with us all the time, 24 hours a day. We always have this sense of I, and according to Buddhism, we don't see our I correctly. We don't know how we really exist. So we're mistaken about our own sense of self or I. And because of that, we get ourselves into all kinds of trouble. Attachment to our I, and then anger and hostility and fear towards anyone or anything that seems to threaten our I, and then attachment, craving, grasping towards anyone or anything that seems to support or give pleasure to our sense of I. Pride, jealousy, all kinds of disturbing emotions come up because of misunderstanding our I. So if we can start working on that, having a more realistic sense of self or I, then it can help to ease a lot of our problems. So in this meditation, we just try to get a sense of our I, our feeling of I, of image, self-image that we have, and then investigate. Try to find it within our body, within our mind, because the idea is, if it does exist, if there is a real I, a solid, concrete, permanent, autonomous I, as it seems to be, the more carefully we look for it, we try to find it, we try to investigate it, the more clear it should become. But what happens is it tends to disappear. We can't find it. So anyway, it helps to lessen or decrease this strong sense of self or I. So let's try that. Make yourselves comfortable. Try to sit with a straight back. If you're feeling sleepy and you think you might start to nod off, go to sleep during the meditation, to prevent that, you can keep your eyes open a little bit. So there's some light coming in. And then just have your gaze direct downwards onto your lap or the floor in front of you. So that's something that can help prevent sleepiness. Try to be as relaxed as possible. Let go of any tension you may have in your body or in your mind. So we need to find a balance between being relaxed, free of tension, on the one hand, but not too relaxed so that we're falling asleep or sitting in a sloppy way. And we need to try to have an alert, awake, clear, bright state of mind. So not too loose, not too tight, but somewhere in the middle, in between those two. Relaxed but alert. And for the first few minutes of the meditation, use the breath to focus your mind and settle your mind down in the present, the here and now. So for now, let go of any thoughts of the past or the future or other places or things in your life. Just put all those other thoughts aside. Just let your mind be right here, right now. Aware of the breath coming in, going out. And anytime your mind gets distracted, away from the breath to something else, gently disengage from that other object and bring your mind back to the breath. So now continue to keep your mind in the present, right here, right now, not wandering away. But now with one part of your mind, a bit like a spy, see if you can catch a glimpse of the sense of self, I. And we need to do this in a very careful way, otherwise we might scare it off. So you could think of a photographer who wants to take photos of animals or birds in nature. So this person needs to move very carefully, silently, cautiously, and not scare them away. So it's similar with looking for the I, the sense of I. It is there, it's within our experience, but if we try too forcefully to identify it, to recognize it, it can disappear. So we have to do this in a careful way, in a cautious way. So one way we could do it is just look at the sense of I that you have right now. Sense of I sitting in the meditation room in Jamyang Buddhist Centre, doing meditation. So what is that I that feels that way? That feels I am sitting here doing meditation. But this might be difficult to do because when we are calm, the sense of I isn't very strong. It's kind of subtle. But it becomes stronger when we feel some emotion. So another way you could get a glimpse of the I would be to try to remember a time when you had some strong emotional experience. It could be like fear or anger or hurt or shock, upset, or it could be excitement. If you got really excited about something wonderful that happened to you or something you anticipate happening. So if you did have a recent experience of feeling some strong emotion, try to remember that experience as vividly as you can, and then try to look for the sense of I who was feeling that emotion, who was excited or frightened or angry. So now ask yourself if this feeling of I, either the I that's sitting here now meditating or the I that had that emotional experience, ask yourself if this I seems to exist on its own, like a real thing. It's really there, not just a fabrication of your mind, a creation of your mind, but something existing on its own, from its own side, kind of autonomous, objectively existing. Or is it something just invented by your mind, like a fantasy? So ask yourself which of those two it is, really existing on its own, or just created by your mind. So, if this I really does exist on its own, from its own side, objectively, then the more closely we examine it, look for it, the more clear it should become. It's a bit similar to seeing a mirage on the horizon. So it appears as if there's water over there, real water, a river, a lake, a sea. But if that was true, if there really was water there, the closer we get, the more obvious, the more clear it should become. So let's see if we can investigate this sense of I that we have. Try to find it. The first place to look is our body. So we feel our body quite strongly. It seems like it's really there. So let's see if we can find our I within our body. Just sort of mentally scan your body, go through your body, and see if you can locate the I anywhere in your body. In your head, or in your chest, or in your stomach. And if you do have the sense of the I being somewhere in your body, think about what's actually there in that part of the body. Organs, bones, blood vessels, nerves, cells. What's actually there in that part of the body? And is any of those things, any of those body parts your I? Can you identify any of them as your sense of self, this I that we often feel so strongly? And if you do think that the I is some part of the body, for example, your brain, then check if that really corresponds with the sense of I that you have. For example, when we look in the mirror, we have a sense of I. For example, we might think, oh, today I look pretty good, or today I look terrible, or I'm fat, or I'm thin, or whatever. We have thoughts about ourselves when we look in the mirror. So that feeling of I, does it really correspond with the brain? If you think about what the brain looks like, it's this mass of neurons, sort of gray, jellyish kind of stuff in our brain. So what the brain really is, what it looks like and so on, does that really match the sense of the I that we have when we see ourselves in the mirror, or we have thoughts like, I'm pretty good looking? So many people identify more with their mind rather than their body. They feel, I'm not some part of my body, I am my mind, my thoughts, my emotions. So let's explore that idea. When we find the I in the mind. So just as the body is made up of different parts and impermanent, changing all the time, so is the mind. Even though the mind is not something physical, it's not made of molecules, atoms, and so on, it's a non-physical thing. But still it has parts. The parts being our different experiences. So every single moment, there are different experiences happening in our mind, like thoughts, emotions, memories, perceptions. Each moment, experiences arise, then they disappear, the next one arises and disappears, and so on. So it's like this stream of different experiences, each one lasting only a moment, a very, very short moment. And different kinds of experiences, happy, unhappy, sad, frightened, angry, loving, peaceful. So the mind is varied, made of different experiences, and it's also impermanent, changing every moment. Nothing permanent, nothing staying the same. So if you do think the I is in the mind, ask yourself where in the mind, which of the experiences in our mind is the I? And in case you think, well, it's all of the experiences. Everything in my mind is me. I am all of my thoughts, all of my experiences, the whole thing. So, does that really correspond with your sense of I? Because every moment our mind is different. Every moment there's a different thought or perception or feeling or emotion. Nothing permanent, nothing fixed, nothing that's always the same. So that means if our I is the mind, our I would be terribly fragmented. One moment happy, the next moment sad, one moment loving, the next moment angry. So is that really how your sense of I is? Your sense of I seems like that? also, we tend to say things like, I think, I feel. When we say such things, are we not saying that there are two different things? There's the I, and then there's thought, or thinking, or feeling. So it seems like I and the mind are actually separate. There's an I that thinks, an I that feels. If our I was the mind, then there'd be no point in saying I think. We would just say think or feel. So in our language and also in our thoughts, do we not have a sense of the I being something separate from the mind that uses the mind to think, to feel, and so on? So let's explore that possibility, the I being something other than the body, other than the mind, something separate from the body and the mind. If it is, if that's true, we should be able to isolate it. We could have our body and our mind in one place, and our I could be somewhere else. Our body and mind could be sitting here in the meditation room in Jamyang, and our I could go out to a coffee shop and have a cup of coffee. So if you do think the I is something separate from the body and separate from the mind, then what is it? What kind of phenomena is it? Where can it be found? So in case anyone thinks maybe there is no I at all, I don't exist at all, so that is not the case. That is not the correct conclusion. We do exist. There is a person sitting here where we are on our meditation cushion or chair. So we do exist. But the problem is, how do we exist? What is the way that we exist? What is the I? So that's something we need to explore and discover on our own. But what Buddhism says is the I is just labeled, named onto our body and mind. So our body exists. It's a collection of material parts, cells, molecules, atoms, changing all the time, every minute, every second. Nothing permanent, nothing fixed. And our mind exists. That's also changing every moment. Different experiences are coming, going, nothing permanent. And then on top of this combination of body and mind, physical and mental components, always changing, on top of this, there's the name I, or whatever our name is, the name our parents gave us or we gave ourselves. There's some kind of name just given to this body-mind collection. So that's all there is to the I. Nothing more. Not something existing on its own, like a real thing objectively existing somewhere within the body and mind. So that kind of I is a fantasy, creation of the mind, not really there. So when you feel ready to come out of the meditation, you can slowly relax your attention, relax your body, open your eyes. So that's just to give some idea of a way of kind of investigating our sense of self or I. And it can be very helpful in a practical way at times when we get emotional. We're feeling, upset or angry or frightened or hurt or whatever, especially if it's some sort of painful, disturbing emotion. But also happy emotions, excitement, pride, or whatever. So if we can have the presence of mind to remember this meditation, we can turn our attention inward and just ask ourselves, what is this I who's feeling this way? There does seem to be not just the emotion, which does exist, that is part of our mind, but there seems to be this other thing, an I who is feeling the emotion, feeling excited. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like an additional thing. And according to Buddhism, there isn't such a thing. That's just a fantasy. There is the emotion, yes, but no separate I who's feeling the emotion. And if you can get an understanding of that, even just a little bit, it really helps to cool down the emotion. This is just the mind. This is just something in my mind arising because of causes and conditions. But there's no I that's feeling the emotion. Because having that sense of an I who is angry sort of gives more power to the anger. Makes it more sort of powerful and real, and it lasts longer. But if we can see it as just an emotion arising in our mind because of various causes and conditions, and no I who is feeling it, it's easier to sort of cool it down and dissipate. Does that make sense? So it can be helpful. But the problem is usually when we have some emotional experience, we're so caught up in it that it's very difficult to remember at that moment to look for the I. But even if we do it later, after we've calmed down a bit more, we can think back about that experience, try to remember that experience as clearly as we can, and then look for the I. So what was that I there? Is it somewhere in my body, somewhere in my mind? Can I find it? Can I point to it? So anyway, that's one kind of practice, one kind of meditation that can help us move towards understanding emptiness. So, any questions about anything about this? We did just meditation we just did, or anything else I've talked about? I've sort of given a lot of information today. Yes?
I just want to clarify something, Venerable. I think when you said earlier today, I can't remember, maybe a session after the lunch, about transmission from the teacher. So, for example, obviously you said that if somebody gives initiation, then he becomes our guru. But if somebody just gives like a lung of, let's say, Mindalan Flamrim, like Gishatashi is giving here, then would that still same kind of thing apply? I mean, would that be just me? I will have to maybe make this kind of thought, or I'm taking him as my guru, or is it?
Yeah, this is what Lama Zopa Rinpoche explained once, that if it's just a teaching, a talk, or even a series of teachings, and we're just attending, listening, learning, we don't have to take that teacher as a guru. I mean, we should still have respect and, behave respectfully towards them, but we don't have to think this is my guru and then have this practice of guru devotion with that teacher. But then he said there are certain exceptions. For example, tantric initiations, if you don't have a choice. You have to take that person as your teacher. And it vows, like taking bodhisattva vows or taking refuge and
transmission.
And transmission. So transmission or lung, this is when a teacher, is reading a text and, or could be a series of texts. And it's for the purpose of, transmitting the lineage of that text. So sometimes they just read the text, blah, 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 really, really fast, and people are just sitting there listening. You're supposed to try to stay awake and alert and feel like you're getting imprints on your mind. But sometimes the teacher will also stop sometimes and make a comment about this and that and so on. But usually they have to keep reading very fast because the texts are very long. So that's the transmission. So if you're attending that kind of thing with the intention of receiving the transmission, I think you also have to have that intention in your mind. Then that person, that teacher, will also, become your teacher, your guru. Yeah. Oh, he also mentioned mantras, because that's a little bit like an initiation. When a teacher is transmitting a mantra, they're reciting the mantra and you're getting the imprint of that. So that would also then become your teacher. Does that make sense?
That answers.
Yeah.
Can I just another very quick one? What if somebody experienced during the meditation on emptiness, if somebody would experience a fear?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that happens.
Yeah. What would that mean?
What does it mean?
Yeah.
It means you're doing a good job.
I'm not saying I have it. I'm interested.
No, they say that because our whole life, and not only this life, but all our past lives as well, we've had this instinctive, inborn sense of a real I. I really exists. There's a real I there. And we're just so habituated to that and caught in that, and that sense of I that we have is, a false sense of I. It's not really there. So when a person gets a sense of it vanishing or disappearing, it's frightening. Yeah, it is frightening. And I mean, people have told me about that. I don't know if I don't think I've ever had that experience. But what they say is if you do have a sense of fear, it means you kind of hit the target. You're this habitual, ages-old, strong sense of ego is being shaken up. So it's actually a good thing. And the Dalai Lama talks about this himself. He said he's for many, many, many years studying, meditating on emptiness. But he said one time he was reading one of the texts on emptiness. I don't remember which text it was, but anyway, he got a sense of the absence of self. And he said it was like lightning, just like he got struck with lightning. It was, whew, wow. And so it's actually a good sign. It is disturbing and frightening. But they say if you're well prepared, in the sense that you really value emptiness, you understand how important it is, why we're meditating on it. It's not to make ourselves scared, but it's an essential realization for progressing on the path of becoming free of suffering. So if you really have a good understanding of the importance, the value, the purpose, the context of understanding emptiness, then they actually say instead of feeling frightened, you can actually feel joyful. Oh, finally, I'm getting rid of this ego. But, so they say different people have different experiences. Some people feel happy, other people feel frightened. But if there is some kind of reaction like that, it's actually a good sign. It means something is happening. The ego is getting shaken up. So I met this guy in France who told me, it seems like he was relatively new, and he had been attending a course or a retreat or something, and there was a meditation on emptiness, and he really got so scared. He said he was so afraid. He felt like he lost his eye, and it was a really frightening experience, and he didn't want to meditate again for a long time. But I guess he didn't totally give up, because sometime later he met Lama Zopa Rinpoche and talked to him about it. And Rinpoche said, oh, it's very good, don't stop meditating, keep going. So then I think he started again, but for a while, yeah, he was quite scared. So I think that's probably because he wasn't so prepared. He was relatively new and maybe didn't fully understand what was going on. So, but I think someone who is more prepared, like His Holiness, obviously. So, he did feel the shock, but it didn't put him off or scare him off or anything. And he probably valued that experience. So it's good to at least know that could happen. And if it does happen, don't be worried about it. Because in fact, this sense of self, the I, we have habitually, it actually doesn't exist. It's not even there. So there's really no reason to be afraid. If we were losing something that existed, like you have a wallet full of money, and you lose that, then, that makes sense to be worried about. But losing something that isn't even there, it was never there to begin with, what's the problem? But this is the problem, because we believe that it is there. For so long, we've been believing there is this real I, and we're so attached to our I, and we cherish it so much, and we feel like we need it, we can't live without it. And this is all just like fantasy. So being afraid, if you understand that, being afraid doesn't make sense. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. But also, one thing that helped me, because I think when I first started learning Buddhism and hearing about emptiness and selflessness, egolessness, and so on, I think I got this idea of my ego being bad, like a bad guy, like my enemy. I have to fight with my ego. Sometimes, the language and the teachings and so on can give you that kind of impression. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, I have this big ego, and oh, I have to get rid of my ego. You know what I'm saying? So then at some point, it occurred to me, wait a minute, how can I have a big ego? There is no ego. Ego doesn't even exist. So getting all upset about having a big ego and feeling like I have to battle with my ego and fight my ego, it's like battling with a shadow. It's not there. There's nothing there to have to fight against, to be upset about. So for me, that was really helpful. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense, but if you ever do have that feeling like, fighting with your ego, or your ego being a bad thing, then it might be helpful to think about that. Any other questions? Well, I've finished with this outline, That's a sort of introduction to Tantra. And then after this, I'm going to start on the text. We don't have much time left. But anyway, we can just start on it, and then we'll carry on tomorrow. So the text is this two-page thing we looked at this morning, which says at the top, illumination of the Tantric tradition. And what you have here is not the complete text. It's only the first few pages. So the rest of it is maybe 60 pages or so on. But I thought this is as much as we'll cover this weekend. And there are other texts that explain the Tantric path. For example, there's one by Lama Tsongkhapa called the Great Stages of the Great Stages of Tantra. I don't think part of it's translated. Jeffrey Hopkins started to translate it in a series of books. The first one called Tantra in Tibet, which was actually published a long time ago. It's a book with a dark green cover. Has anyone seen it? Yeah. So that's the first part of this text. And then a second part is called Daiya Yoga. I saw it in the library, Daiya Yoga. And then a third one is called, I think, Yoga in Tibet, something like that. Anyway, so part of that text has been translated, but it's quite hard. Lama Tsongkhapa's style is to be very precise, very exact, and bring in lots of quotations from here and there. So it's very detailed. It's a great thing to study if you can, but this text here by Ngawan Palden is shorter, less complicated, less technical, so it's recommended as a good way to understand Tantra. However, it's still, I think for us, a little difficult in a way because Tibetan texts tend to be very concise. They don't often go into elaborate explanation, which is why this book is very good, because Kirti Sencha Rinpoche, this wonderful Lama, took this text, used this text as a basis, and then just gave explanation of it. So what I will do is I will share, not every word, it's quite a big book, but I'll share some of what Kirti Sencha Rinpoche taught about this text. Okay. So the text starts with some verses of homage, and I'm not going to go into all of that, because I think much of it is, well, maybe I will. Maybe it's nice to do. So the first line says, Namo Guru Sumati Munindra Vajradharya. That's Sanskrit. Namo means homage or praise. Guru is guru. The term lama is actually the Tibetan equivalent of guru. And they say that the term guru actually means heavy. But that doesn't mean, they weigh 200 kilos. But heavy in the sense of having a lot of qualities, heavy with good qualities. And then Sumati Munendra Vajradharya, Kirti Sencha Rinpoche means, this line means, I prostrate to the pure-minded Guru, Shakyamuni Vajradhara. So Vajradhara, you come across that term a lot in Tantra. Vajradhara is said to be the main manifestation of the Buddha when he taught Tantra. So when the Buddha taught Tantras, at least some of the Tantras, he appeared in the aspect of Vajradhara. And then he says, may the great Vajradhara, the union of the ultimate clear light, innate mind, and the relatively pure illusory body, bestow great blessings on myself and all other reincarnating beings. So this is paying homage to Vajradhara. And then in the second and third line, he mentions the union of the ultimate clear light, innate mind. So that's this very subtle mind of clear light, which is actually only mentioned or identified in highest Yoga Tantra, not in the other classes of Tantra. But in highest Yoga Tantra, the goal is to awaken or make manifest this innate mind of clear light, and then use that mind to realize emptiness. So you have, clear light mind realizing emptiness. And then here it mentions in the third line, the relative pure illusory body. So again, this is something in highest Yoga Tantra. The illusory body is a body that manifests from the wisdom mind, the clear light mind. So in highest Yoga Tantra, this is the goal one is trying to achieve, the union of the clear light innate mind and the relatively pure illusory body. So that experience, which is sort of the culmination of tantric practice in highest Yoga Tantra, is the main cause for achieving enlightenment, Buddhahood. Excuse me. And Vajradhara, he's saying here, Vajradhara represents that union, the clear light mind and the illusory body. So in this verse, the author is asking for blessings from Vajradhara for himself and all other beings. Blessings to be able to achieve that union, that goal of enlightenment. And then in the next verse, he's asking for help from various lamas of the lineage, such as Nagarjuna. Nagarjuna, not only was he a great master in terms of emptiness, writing many texts on emptiness, starting the Madhyamika tradition, but he was also the author of some tantric texts. Chandrakirti, Losandrakpa, so these are also great masters of the past who wrote texts on Tantra. And then he says, with the wish to place imprints on my mind and to benefit others of equal fortune, I present a short and clear explanation of the grounds and paths of the 4 classes of secret mantra. Though the chance to properly meditate on this method is rare, my resolution to practice this method is not inferior. May the Dharma Lords grant me permission to present the Dharma in conformity with their intention. So this is typical in the beginning of a text where the author will write something about why he's writing the text, what is his intention. So he's saying here his intention is to place imprints on his own mind, to familiarize himself further with the teachings of Tantra, but also to benefit other beings. And this term grounds and paths, I don't know if you've come across that before, but the term path is quite common. And a path, when they talk about a path in Buddhism, a path is actually a mind, realization. The main path, for example, in the Four Noble Truths, the 4th truth is true paths, or the truth of the path. So the path there mainly refers to the realization of emptiness, the direct, non-conceptual realization of emptiness. So that's the most important path, the most important realization that one wants to achieve. So paths here in this context means realizations, such as the realization of emptiness, but many other realizations as well. So when they talk about, and the term ground is also a realization, it's a state of mind. So when they talk about grounds and paths, they're talking about stages of realization that our mind progresses through as it's going higher and higher and eventually reaching enlightenment. And then the last verse in that section says, may those who possess superior fortune and intelligence and who take responsibility for their birth engage like peacocks in the vibrant dance of explanation and debate amid the thunderous roar of Losang's explanations. So this is a very poetic verse. Basically, he's just saying we should feel very joyful, like peacocks dancing. I guess it says when, it says in the commentary, it said that when there's a storm, peacocks are happy and they dance with delight. So in a similar way, when we're listening to these teachings, we should also have delight. And Losang, in the last line, is referring to Losang Drakpa or Lama Tsongkhapa. Losang Drakpa was his name. Okay, so I'll just mention the structure of the text, and then we'll finish. So then at the bottom of the page it says, in explaining the principles of the grounds and paths of 4 great secret classes of Tantra, there are 2 divisions. First, a brief presentation of the way to progress on the path of the 3 lower classes of Tantra. Second, a detailed explanation of the way to progress on the path of highest Yoga Tantra. So the first 3 classes of Tantra are covered very briefly. There's just a few pages for each one. And then the 4th class of Tantra, highest Yoga Tantra, covers many pages. So most of the text is actually about that, about highest Yoga Tantra. And so then on the next page, it starts with the 3 lower classes of Tantra. And if you skip down to the second outline where it says the actual lower classes of Tantra, then it says 3 divisions: action, performance, and Yoga Tantra. So he's going to go through each of these 3 classes of Tantra one by one. And then in the big letters it says how to progress on the path of action Tantra or Kriya Tantra. And it says this has 4 divisions. How to become a vessel suitable for meditating on the path. So what that means is how do we get involved in action Tantra and be ready to engage in practicing action Tantra. And then second is how to keep the vows and commitments purely after becoming a suitable vessel. So to become a suitable vessel actually means taking an initiation. So you have to, start by taking an initiation, and then after taking an initiation, at the time of the initiation, there's vows and commitments that you take on. So then how you keep those, how do you maintain those? And then the third point is how to approximate the deity while keeping the commitments. So the word approximate, actually, when they talk about doing a retreat, a tantric retreat, for example, if you're going to do, Vajragini retreat or Yamantaka retreat, the word for retreat in Tibetan literally translates as approximation. And I think the reason is because approximate means to get close to, So what we're trying to do in a retreat is get close to the deity, move closer to, get more involved with the deity. So this will become more clear as we go along. Then the 4th point is how to establish the siddhis after having achieved approximation. So this word siddhi, I don't know, sometimes it's translated as power or feat. There's different kinds of powers that you can achieve. For example, walking through walls. These kind of simple things. Anyway, this will come later, but it said that on the basis of doing tantric practices and reciting a lot of mantras and so on and so forth, it's possible to achieve these kind of powers or siddhis. But this is not the main purpose of engaging in tantric practice. The real purpose is the high ultimate goal of enlightenment, to be able to help all living beings. So one has to be very careful, because some people might, get excited about these powers and want to achieve these powers, and then, I don't know what. You could use them. You have to be very careful, because they could be used to harm people, and that's certainly wrong. Or they could be used to show off, to impress people. But that would also be wrong. So these siddhis, these powers, should only be used in beneficial ways. If there's, a chance to benefit others with these powers, but not for personal gain or fame or anything harmful and so on. So this outline, these 4 points, is the same outline that will be used for each of the 4 classes of Tantra. So as we go through the text, we'll look at each of the 4 classes based on these points. So let's stop there. I think we've done enough for today. And tomorrow we will plunge into Action Tantra. The text itself is relatively short. It's just 3 more pages to go. But there's a lot of material in there. So there's also this chart. Well, there's 2 charts actually about Action Tantra. This one says close approximation in Action Tantra. It's got lots of divisions. So this is explaining the different practices that you do in Action Tantra. So it's better to wait till tomorrow when our mind is more fresh. Hopefully fresh, clear. Some of these points are a little difficult. So if you have time tonight, you could just read through these pages. You might not understand everything, but don't be surprised. It might be complicated. So just read through it just to make yourself familiar with it. And if you have time, you can also read through the 50 verses of Guru Devotion, or just as much of it as you can, just to get familiar with that. And you can answer questions on that tomorrow. So, any last questions before we finish for tonight? Do you feel full? Do you feel overflowing with information? So let's make a dedication of the merit, the positive energy that we have created today, coming together, spending all this time, starting with a good motivation, an altruistic motivation, and then spending this time listening, talking about, meditating on these teachings, which are so precious because they are a powerful and quick path for developing our Buddha nature, transforming our mind into enlightened mind, which will be the best thing we can do for ourselves, but also the best thing we can do for others, for the world. So we've definitely created a lot of good energy here today. So feel confident in that. Feel a sense of joy or rejoicing that we have done this. And then we can share this energy with others, with all other people, all other beings everywhere. May it help all of them become free of suffering and the causes of suffering. And may it help all of them achieve real peace, genuine happiness, and at least start making manifest their Buddha nature, awakening their Buddha nature, and getting closer to enlightenment, being able to achieve enlightenment as quickly as possible. And there's some there's some dedication prayers. The last page of the little booklet, page 34. Dedication prayer and long life prayer. May the supreme jewel, bodhicitta, that has not arisen, arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers, protector of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All-powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. Okay, so have a good evening. See you tomorrow.